Tonight's speech is on strategic thinking, understanding the consumer. A brilliant idea is only brilliant if it's saying the right thing, and that's what strategy is all about, finding the right thing to say. Alistair Crompton, in his book The Craft of Copywriting, describes strategy as a map that shows you where the gold is buried and says, dig here. Tonight's speaker has shown me many times where the gold is buried. Johnny Blompier is Strategic Planning Director at DDB Needham, Sydney. And originally from London, working for Ogilvy and Mather, Johnny was poached by DDB in 1989. During his time at DDB, he's provided strategic direction for McDonald's renowned Mac Time campaign and the highly effective All Day, Everyday Hyundai campaign. He's won the Golden Pinnacle at the Advertising Federation of Australia's Advertising Effectiveness Awards. He teaches the AFA Ad School, and in his spare time he writes a column for B&T. Please welcome Johnny Blompier.
Understanding consumers. This is what I'm here to talk about. I'm really here to talk about what I do for a living, which is exactly that, understanding consumers. It really is critical for developing any advertising strategy. And like an aeroplane, the time that you need most power is really when you're taking off. As soon as you've actually taken off, you're flying, it's a lot easier, you burn a lot less fuel. And that's why insight is really, really important at the start of a process. It's what makes writing ads a lot easier. Now, every ad, whether it's good or whether it's bad, is designed to impact consumers. It's designed really to change their behaviour and is based on an understanding of how they think and how they behave. The purpose of this lecture is to give you some understanding that may actually help you to write better advertising. It's really based on really just two things. Consumers' understanding, or the understanding of consumers' relationship with brands, and understanding consumers' relationship with advertising. All right, so I'm going to explore both of those in some detail. Let's start by exploring the brand relationship. What I'm going to do is begin by looking at brand life and brand history. I'm going to also look in a little bit of depth of why brands are important and how does branding actually work, and then end up by leaving you with some issues that I think are important for the development of creative. So let's start at the beginning and begin with the brand life. This is a little quote from the Group Chief Executive of United Biscuits. At an MRS conference in England, he actually was quoted as saying this: "Buildings age and become dilapidated. Machines wear out, people die, but what live on are the brands." It's a pretty powerful statement. If you doubt it, I'd just like to show you next something that was uncovered by the Boston Consulting Group in the States. They actually did this research, and they looked at all these brands: Kodak, Del Monte, Wrigley, Gillette, Singer, Coca-Cola, Lipton, Goodyear. These were all brands that in 1923 were the leaders in their category, hold #1 position for market share. The extraordinary thing was that in 1990 they had exactly the same position. Brands are extraordinary things. They have a huge, and will carry a huge history of experience for us all. They're based on our own experiences and many years of purchasing and consuming. The majority of advertising is not really about changing or developing brands. What it's about is actually reinforcing their core values and what they stand for. So let's get into that and explore what brands represent and why they're important. A couple of things here. Firstly, brands are an extension of products. The values that brands have really are things that actually transcend the product attributes, the things that you buy, you find on the shelf that are actually in the car. They're augmented values. When people talk about brands, they also talk about, rich, deep emotional values. And I'd say it's not necessarily the emotional values that you need to concentrate on or understand. What you need to understand is the intangible values. Now, when you look at what a product is and what a brand is, I'm not saying that the two are divorced, there's no relationship. There's still a very, very strong relationship. A poor product performance can absolutely destroy a brand. A brand won't keep itself relevant forever if you've got a pretty shitty product performance. Example I give is Philip Morris. Marlboro cigarettes was a brand, I believe, in Australia years ago. Marlboro cigarettes were really, really popular. Everyone was smoking them. They were the brand to be seen with. And over a period of a great many years, the brand eventually died, disappeared. And it's still around, but it's very hard to find. What actually happened was quite interesting. Philip Morris is a good international company. What it does, like many international companies, it brings out all these great Top Gun firefighting executives that are there to actually do a job in Australia. What they did was they came over and they were charged with making more profit. Now, the first thing that you do if you're in a job for a couple of years, you've got to make more profit. What you don't do is invest in the brand. You don't say, do more advertising, make it more desirable, make it more relevant. If you're going to be there for 2 years, what you do to make it more profitable is actually cut costs. So that's what they did. The first guy came in and he said, well, I'll just reduce our production costs a bit. I'm going to buy cheaper quality tobacco. Fine, everything was going hunky-dory. No one really noticed. Second guy comes in a number of years later and says, I've got to make myself a hero so I look good in the next job. He did the same. Poorer quality tobacco went into it. Ultimately, consumers, the guys that were actually smoking this brand, woke up one day and went, this stuff, it's not really as good as it used to be. And they moved away in their droves. So the product performance, if it's bad, it can destroy brands if the product doesn't live up to the promise. So that's the first point, brands as an extension of products. The second point, brands extend a product's life cycle, unless it's Marlboro cigarettes, of course. But you're familiar with what a product life cycle is. There's this marketing theory that says you launch a new product, people try it, and the word gets around, more people try it, your sales eventually go up. And then they kind of flatten out at some level, you've got a good market share and you continue selling the brands. And eventually what happens is another new product comes onto the market and you start selling less and eventually the product dies. So it goes whoop, up, sell loads, and then you kind of, at the end of its life cycle, you're in the cash cow stage, you're just sort of churning these things out. The best example of that is probably cars. The Laser is a brand. It's been launched, it's quite an old brand, an established brand now. It's gone up, they're selling loads. They keep trying to keep it relevant with new model launches. Eventually, in one day, I don't know when it'll be, they'll supersede that with another label, another brand. So that is how the product life cycle exists. What brands do, and that was my point of actually showing that stuff from the Boston Consulting Group, is actually extend that life cycle so brands don't die. That's why Coke is still the number one in its category, 70 years on. So brands extend the product's life cycle. Thirdly, brands command a premium and loyalty. And at the most basic level, example of that is probably Kellogg's. In all the supermarkets, it's why people actually are willing to pay more for Kellogg's cornflakes than actually buy an own label product. Has anyone eaten own label cornflakes here? Anyone? 1, 2, 3? Anyone else? Who's eaten Kellogg's cornflakes? Well, oh my God, lots more. Now, why would you not even bother trying the own brand cornflakes? The reason is you believe that they're actually inferior because you've got a relationship with the branded product. So that's one of the most important things, and particularly in the market where the power of retailers is really there to actually undermine the power of brands and actually start trading them off. They want to put them on special and discount and actually get their own products in there. The next point, brands are really useful to consumers. It sounds kind of silly really, but brands actually make all of our lives easier. What they do is bring order out of chaos in quite an unstructured and strange old world. It's a funny old world. What they do is make purchase decisions for us an awful lot easier. I normally, when I go shopping, I actually try and get out of Woolworths, and I can't really do it under an hour. I just go up and down all the aisles, throwing everything in. If I've missed something that's tough, I'm out of that. And I find that's pretty stressful hour. Can you imagine what that would be like if I actually had to go and rationalise all my product decisions? So you're going, okay, well, I'll get in detergent. Now, which one, I haven't tried them all, I don't know what they're like. Which one's best? So you sit there and you start reading all the back labels and you try and work out which is the best one. To be honest, it just doesn't matter. What you need is the trust and reassurance that the product you're going to take off the shelf is going to be pretty good. So it actually saves you an enormous amount of time and stops you rationalising things. The last point of why brands are important is something very few people actually grasp. Brands are actually owned by consumers. If you think about that, brands actually don't exist. I mean, we talk about them as if they're, real tangible things you can reach out and touch them. They don't exist. You can't actually go and touch a brand, you can't talk to a brand, you can't have a conversation with it. What a brand is and where it exists in the mind of consumers. All it is just simply a whole series of perceptions and beliefs and attitudes which are held in the consumer's head. The power of brands doesn't come from the manufacturer, the guy that actually makes the product. The power of brands comes from the wallets of consumers. So they're not, whilst manufacturers don't own them, they don't own the values, what they do is they're responsible for the continued health of those brands. And exploring that and the things that you probably need to know is really how branding works. How does it work? Well, it kind of works at a number of levels. At the most basic level, brands and branding operates as a mark of authenticity. Okay, underneath that, developing it slightly more, is brands offer for consumers a reassurance of performance. Underneath that, still more developed, is brands can offer a transformation of experience. So somehow when I use this brand, I'm going to have a better experience than if I used a different brand. And lastly, they offer personality, which can be a really important point of differentiation for your advertising and for your brand. But all of those things in different levels, they build one on top of each other. They're not mutually exclusive. What they do is all add value. Give consumers another reason to keep buying this product and not going to buy the unlabelled cornflakes. So I'm going to explore each of those in a little more depth, beginning with authenticity. Authenticity, what's that mean? Well, at the most basic level, authenticity is a promise that the brand or the product is what it is. And if you think about that most simply, it's sort of when you buy a jar of Vegemite, when you've got Vegemite on the outside of the label, what you're actually saying to someone is that there's actually Vegemite inside it. And that's really important for people. Brands were actually invented by manufacturers, and the reason that they did that was to protect themselves. It was a defense mechanism against passing off and other people pretending to have real Vegemite in whatever products they had. So that's why they were invented. But authenticity is important because it also does another thing. It says it is the leader. And leadership is very, very important for consumers. A lot of consumers, all of us, we're very often a bit like sheep. We often don't trust in our own judgment. The people that are actually willing to buck the system and don't give a stuff about anyone else are either bankrupts or millionaires. But the majority of us don't fall into either of those categories. But the reason we do that is that popularity of a brand, the stuff that everybody else is drinking or the stuff that everybody else is smoking or driving, gives a brand real authority. I'll give you an example. One of the brands I work on is Hyundai. About 8 years ago, they've only been in this country for 8 years. 8 years ago, nobody wanted to buy one, and everyone was saying, "Oh, what are you driving there? A Hyundai? Oh, well, I'm not sure I like that." And the reason why is they don't want to be a guinea pig. What happens if it's no good? What happens if it doesn't work really well? Or what happens if they're not going to be around tomorrow, the day after? Where there was no trust, no reassurance with them. A few brave people bought them and they kind of didn't really care that much. But it's only now, 7 years later, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well actually, I'm prepared to accept better things about Hyundai. They're pretty good, aren't they? If you think about it, you see more of them on the road, they're okay." So popularity is very important. At another level, authenticity also represents what I'd call the pull of power brands. And all the brands I mentioned up front is what I'd describe as a power brand. And power brands are extraordinarily powerful, extraordinarily potent. To give you an example, on the brand I work on is McDonald's. You remember the LA riots? A few years back now, an extraordinary example of what happened. In Los Angeles, everybody went nuts, started looting, burning and pillaging for weeks over there, taking people out of the cars, kicking them to death and doing all sorts of great stuff. Now, what happened was, it was just a free-for-all. The police didn't go in there. All these rioters went out and started looting shops and, "Oh yeah, I'll get the TV, the toaster, great." Off they went, they had a field day. And then it just turned into mindless violence. Let's burn whatever we can. Now, in the worst hit areas, there are a whole raft of food chains. Absolutely, I don't know how many, but they were quite a lot. All of them came under attack. They started getting burnt out, petrol bombs, the whole lot. Everything went up in smoke, with the exception of one. That was McDonald's. And it sparked this enormous thing off in the States where there was actually a documentary shot about it. Why did McDonald's not get burnt? Because there was a KFC next door, which got razed to the ground. There was a Burger King the other side, history. And there's the McDonald's place that was just fine. It was defended only, there weren't guards or anything around there, it was defended by the power of that brand. And it's complex, it's all to do with the things that McDonald's does. It gives back to the community, it gets involved in the community, it does a lot of things. But it was the brand that kept that place safe and all the others not so safe. But as I said, the pull of power brands is really good. If you understand a power brand, it gives you permission to speak in a way that no one else can replicate. Let's give you an example of that. If you could play the first commercial, please. In 1873, Levi's only came shrink to fit. It's a really good example in terms of how branding works, capturing the authenticity of the brand, the pull of power brands. I really don't know if Levi's invented jeans. I'm not sure I really care, but what I do believe is that somehow Levi's are the real McCoy. everything, therefore, by default, is sort of imitation and second best. What it's done beautifully by focusing on the authenticity, the integrity of the brand, it's just reposition everything else. So that's how authenticity works. The second level of how branding works is in reassurance. And in reassurance, the first thing it offers you is consistency. And consistency of a product or a brand experience. I'm going to experience the same thing this time when I use it as the next time I use it. And if you think about it, anywhere you go in the world, I can fly up to Indochina tomorrow, I can walk into a store, pick up a bottle of Coke, and I know before I actually open it exactly what it's going to taste like, what it's going to feel like, what it's going to do for me, and all the kind of intrinsic rewards. It's going to be exactly the same. So consistency, you get a brand, it's the reassurance, the trust that when I go in and experience it, it's going to be the same every time. What it also provides is a value of a brand promise. What do I mean by a brand promise? It sort of relates to the fact that consumers actually own brands, not manufacturers. A few years ago, actually, in the States, Coke, reformulated their product. Shock horror. There was absolute uproar about that. People were incensed. They were writing letters, they were on chat shows. It was, how can Coke do this? They've changed our Coke. There was such a major uproar that they actually had to, come out publicly and withdraw the product from the market and say, no, we're going back to the old formulation. Sorry guys, big mistake. So what the manufacturer had done had actually transgressed the product experience, the promise. But that's a quite extreme example. If you see what a brand promises, for instance, if you buy a suit, you go and you say, you buy a Hugo Boss suit. What that does, what that promise of that experience is, what that product, that brand promises for you, is that when you walk into any new business meeting or presentation, any business situation, you're going to feel confident, relaxed, and look pretty good, pretty schmick. Doesn't matter where you are. So that is the value of a brand promise. Let me give you another example of the product reassurance with this next commercial.
It's done. Hurry. Ciao.
It should only be a couple of days.
Take care. Ciao. Ciao, ciao, ciao.
I don't expect my wife to go out and cut the brake pipes on my car. But somehow when you look at what you believe is that somehow the Pirelli tyres are going to perform better than the products. Now I may never, and I hope I never am, in an experience where I've actually got a drive like, I'm sure I wouldn't be able to do it, I'd be straight off in the first corner, no trouble. But what I do when I drive and enjoy the product, obviously sticking within the speed limit, what I believe is that I'm going to be confident and relaxed that whatever comes along I'll be able to handle it, and if something bad happens I'll be in a better position because I've got my Pirellis on. So because I'm confident and relaxed, I'm able to enjoy driving more. I'm not worrying about my tyres. So that's one way in which, if you like, advertising provides reassurance of a brand's performance. The next level is one of transforming an experience. What do I mean by that? Well, it's the experience of using a brand. It's often said that you're really, when you buy a brand, all you're doing really is paying for the name. It's sort of true, but really what you're doing is you're buying benefits that really go beyond the functional attributes of the product. Charles Revson of Revlon actually once said this. He said, "In the factory we make cosmetics. In the store we sell hope." And it's quite true. And if you think about what people buy when they buy products, they're actually very rarely buying the physical product attributes. If you're buying toothpaste, what are you buying when you're buying toothpaste? You're buying confidence and security. Confidence that your teeth aren't going to fall out, that your breath won't smell, you know, that everything's going to be okay. People will talk to you or sit next to you in lectures like these. When you're buying a Shark golf ball, that little thing, what are you really buying there? You're buying a belief or maybe a prayer that maybe your game's going to be improved. You're buying a belief that you can win, you can do it. When you're buying a detergent, if you're a mum, what are you really buying? You're buying a demonstration of the care and love that you actually give for your family. And what happens, what's really interesting about some of these values, the things that you're buying is that because you believe in about the brand, they actually get projected back onto the products themselves. And that's why the values of brands and the experience using them, that's why there's an enormous difference between blind tests and branded tests of products. I actually did some groups about 6-7 months ago, just beer groups. I had all these kind of hardened, real Tooheys New drinkers, they were sort of VB drinkers, they're all sat there. I just played a game with them. I said, all right, what we're going to do now, I'm going to give you all these products and I want you to actually pick which is the product. They went, oh yeah, great, I can tell mine, no drama. So sitting there and they're sort of sculling these beers and tasting them all and they go, oh, that's just great, fantastic. And then another said, oh, that's absolutely piss, that's got to be Foster's. And they go through all of these kind of rationalisations. The extraordinary thing is most of them got it wrong. Some of them even got kind of quite violent about it and got really aggressive. What do you mean that? I don't believe that's Tooheys New. Prove that that's Tooheys New to me. It's only research. Jeez. But the extraordinary thing is that your values, your belief about the brand becomes a product attribute. In reality, a lot of people just can't tell. So this, in terms of the transformation of experience, it works really kind of at two levels and they're linked. The first is in inner-directed experiences. And what I mean by that is how it makes you feel. Whether it's, drinking a beer, I'm a real bloke if I drink this particular brand of beer as opposed to another one. Or for instance, what about if you get ill? Think about what happens when you're ill. People react very differently when they're ill. I don't know, some people love to kind of, just get under the doona and be brought tea and sympathy if they can find anyone to do it. They go, poor me, I'm so sick. Other people say, sod it, I'm going to work, I don't give a stuff, it's only flu, and off they go. And they go off to work. But if you take the second type of person, what might he take to actually treat his flu? He might actually take Codral, because he's sort of attracted by the sort of soldier-on promise that it actually offers. And what it does, it's not going to cure his flu, because, that's the great thing about drugs, actually, the drug companies, I didn't say drugs then, drug companies, you're sitting there, you're taking all this stuff and nothing happens, you're still sick. But what it does is it makes you feel differently. When you take Codral, it actually makes you feel as if you're not giving in to this illness. You're not letting it get on top of you. So that's an example of the transformation on an inner experience, what it means to me, and the experience of consuming that product. Another example is kind of outer-directed things, the statement a brand makes. And I've never really understood this, but the Ford Maverick, do they still make that? Ford Maverick and the Nissan Patrol. Those cars are identical products. In some of the cars, you actually get in and it says one thing on the bonnet, and you get in and it says something entirely different under the bonnet. And, you know, who's fooling who here? But people make you know, I bet you that a Nissan Patrol or a Ford Maverick would be different prices. How come nobody went out and actually bought the lowest price? The reason is they prefer being seen in a Maverick than a kind of Patrol. I don't know. And maybe that's why neither of the people that were considering those vehicles would buy a Volvo, because that's got all sorts of, it's a very big statement about the type of driver you are. And maybe that's just not the image you want to project. So that's an example of kind of outer directed transformation. That's how other people will actually see me. Of course, there's an enormous overlap of both inner directed things and outer directed things. If you think about designer labels, the kind of Yves Saint Laurent posh gear or Hugo Boss stuff, why do people spend all the money on that stuff? You ever thought about that? Because the label is always on the inside. There's nothing out there going, hey, it's Yves Saint Laurent. But people still pay a lot of money for those things. And the reason is they feel confident because they now know what you'd think if you knew. That's why they spend all the money. It's great. Well, it kind of makes sense, right? And I mean, another example of that, if you go off to Bangkok and you go down the Patpong markets, of course to go shopping, but you go down there and you buy a Rolex watch, in, you know, one of those fake ones. I think you can get one for all of $5 or something extreme. Why doesn't everyone go out and get the big Rolex? Hey, look at that, isn't it smart? The reason you don't, and the reason I didn't actually, is because, you know, you may be able to fool other people, but you won't fool yourself. You know it's a fake. Shit, oh, jeez, it was only $10. I'm cheating. So that's why you don't buy it. Transformation of experience. Time for another commercial break, I think. But, you know, it's an interesting thing. Transformation of experience, what it does is allows you to feel what it'd be like to strap on a pair of Nikes. And what it doesn't do is show everybody going, oh, look, I've got my Nikes, I feel like a winner. What it does is allow you to feel what it'd be like to walk on the field wearing the same boots that Maradona wears. It makes you go off feeling like a world champion. So that's a transformation of experience. The last level is that of personality. Personality is often the way that you add value to brands. A great example is loo paper, toilet stationery. But I mean, the toilet stationery kind of sums up the Kleenex attitude, doesn't it? It's all very clean and nice and warm and cosy, and it really appeals to, you know, introverted people. And I don't know whether they've got this, but they're bound to have air freshener in there and little pink doilies and nice stuff. And that's what their bathroom experience is about, and the kind of gentle attributes that Kleenex offers is really kind of appropriate to them. If you take Sorbent, on the other hand, it's a very different kind of experience. You look at the little kid running around and lifting up the loo seat and the girl sort of swinging on the ropes. It's got an entirely different personality. It's brash, it's outgoing, it's kind of a lot more extrovert. It's the kind of personality, you sum it up, it's Sorbent bars are the type of people that really don't mind whether the door's open or shut when they're having a pee. And that's how you differentiate brands. They actually have very different personalities. It's a different way of adding value. The next thing is it really makes the product experience unique. And this is what I was talking to you about before when you're taking that sip of beer. you have a totally different expectation of what that product is, and it's a great job, don't you? Just love it. It's fantastic. All the values of the brand get projected back onto the product, onto the beer. I believe that VB's stronger, more masculine, da-da-da-da-da-da. Those are the values of the brand that are actually coming out in the product. The brand relationship is also the basis for loyalty. We're all drawn to brands that fit well. They're a good fit for us, and that's kind of, we're out there just checking out. Yeah, I feel good with that one. Don't like that one. Feel good with that. We're doing that, constantly matching up. It's a way of defining ourselves, and it's this constant means of social exchange. Brands are really just an extension of ourselves, a way in which we'd like to be seen. And once you've got that relationship, that's your basis for building loyalty, because you like to hang around with friends, basically. Let's take another commercial break.
I wonder who's kissing her now. I wonder who's teaching her how. I wonder who's looking into her eyes, breathing sighs and telling lies. I wonder who's buying the wine for lips that I used to call mine. I wonder if she ever tells him of me. I wonder who's kissing her now.
If only everything in life was as reliable as a Volkswagen.
It's pretty wacky stuff when you think about it. I mean, just imagine a car commercial that hardly shows the car. And you talk about what the product attribute is. The product attribute is reliability. And they don't concentrate on lots of engines and, talking about the car. What they're talking about is the driver. A driver who's confident, he's an individual, he's able to cope with whatever life throws at him. No wonder he drives a Volkswagen, because that's what he expects out of the car. It's a simple metaphor for a brand experience, and that's why Volkswagens command a premium over similar cars in their class. So that's the different levels: authenticity, transformation of experience, and personality that I've actually talked about. I started off by saying what we're trying to do is satisfy our need for control and reassurance. It's one of the fundamentals of brand value. It's also a tool for dividing up the world, a means of social exchange. So what brands do is they create a value which goes beyond the merely functional. So out of all of this, I want to summarise it by leaving you with a few issues that could be important for writing ads. The first is this: the responsibility to be true to brands. Okay? You don't own brands. The manufacturer, your client, doesn't own brands. Consumers own them, and they have very, very fixed expectations of the way in which you speak to them, as opposed to the way you don't speak to them. It's one of the hardest things to learn, I believe, with developing creative work, is this whole aspect of tonality and pitching it in the right tone and feel. Because often in research groups, you'll have people come back and say, well, it just doesn't feel like a Volkswagen ad. What they're actually talking about is your work is at odds with their view of the brand. So rather than getting irritated by that, understand it. Use it to your advantage, because when you do, you end up with very, very powerful creative work. The second thing is reinforce brand strengths and just forget about the weaknesses. I just had a client in London, he had a great brand actually. It was called HP Sauce. You can buy it over here, but it's not really the same thing. No one uses it much. Everyone used to use it in lorry CAFs on the M1 and stuff like this. It was just everywhere. And he was really, really nervous. He said, I can't believe this product of mine. It's got this really working class image. And we're going, yeah? He said, but I want to make it modern and contemporary and a little bit more upmarket. We said, well, why? That's its values, that's its core strengths. And it was one of the things, as it turned out, he didn't feel particularly comfortable with his brand. And he wanted to change it, develop it. It's a weakness that we've got this working class image. It wasn't, it was one of its greatest strengths. We used some ads with Frank Bruno giving us kind of image of great punch, which just worked their socks off. Another one is sometimes brands lose currency. They become less relevant. We also worked on Lucozade in the UK, and this is going back about 7 years. 7 years ago, the brand was just losing share hand over fist. What was happening to this brand was that the brand was associated with recovery. It's when you're ill, get back on your feet with a nice glass of Lucozade. And all it is just sugar with a little bit of orange colouring. There's no nutritional benefit to it. And so, people had changed. What had happened is their relationship with illness had changed. People didn't want to know about illness anymore. We actually switched the whole thing around, and we started talking about Lucozade as an energy drink, and sales just went through the roof. We used Daley Thomas and all these great, exciting whippy-do ads. What was extraordinary, we weren't allowed to enter this for the Effectiveness Awards because they didn't want the competition to know about it. But Lucozade, in 2 years, became the second biggest selling soft drink in the UK. It was outselling Pepsi. It's just extraordinary. So reinforce brand strengths, forget about the weaknesses. Next thing I'll leave you with is just stand for something. There's something Bernbach once said, which I think says it all. If you stand for something, you'll always find those that stand for you and those that stand against you. If you stand for nothing, you'll find nobody stands for you and nobody stands against you. So avoid that. So, in summary of all of this, the value of advertising is really about adding value to the product. And that's what people buy. Time for another commercial break.
Feels so good. You're lying here next to me. Oh, what a groove. You have no idea how it feels. My hands just won't keep still. I love you, baby. I love you, I love you, I love you. Just wanna hold you.
And here come United storming through the middle again now. Watson on the ball for McClare's outside.
Don't you just hate it when that happens?
Fosters, don't you just love it?
No.
He's failed to score.
Just goes to prove there are no formulas. It's got nothing to do with the Foster's brand. But in a way, it works. And the reason that it works for a lot of consumers, the quality of the advertising is also a really important statement about the quality of the brand. When you're thinking about ordering a schooner in a pub, it can be as simple as, I like the advertising, therefore, why not give it a go? Advertising is really and can really provide currency in its own right. So that's the second aspect I'm actually going to talk to you about tonight. We've talked about consumers' relationship with the brand, consumers' relationship with advertising. I'm going to take you through how advertising used to work, how advertising works now, and leave you with some other issues for creative work. Okay? how advertising used to work, it would sort of work a bit like this. There were manufacturers who basically used advertising as a talk piece. So when they're saying, this is our product, this is our way of communicating with consumers. It was a vehicle for delivering relevant selling messages. So you hit them with the relevant selling message, then somehow that, in theory, would actually impact on their attitudes and beliefs about the brand, force some kind of magical positive reassessment, and they'd obviously buy the brand. Now, if it wasn't working, they were probably obviously not getting the message, so you had to get out there and tell them more often. And maybe that's why we have all these sort of 15-second cut downs now. Just make sure that they hit over their head more times because they're not getting the damn message. What it does is, this is my words, it views advertising as a persuasive flow of information. So advertising hits consumers and then goes on to the brand. As an example of how this works, I thought I'd take you through, I couldn't actually get them out of here, but 3 decades. So this is over 30 years of milk advertising in the UK. Let's play the first couple. This is the 60s, right?
This highly trained athlete is about to attempt the biggest jump of this training session. And he'll make it. He's a pinter man, at the peak of fitness, helped by the milky drinks, a pint a day at least. Milk is as much a part of his training as the very pole he vaults with. Pinter man is strong.
We're Pinter girls. No, we're not in a rally. We're just here to help. We're giving them milk. Nothing like milk for the nerves. Oh, he's got a nerve? Well, you did just give him a pinter, Linda.
But, you know, there's that period, the 60s, it was great. What it was really all about was just, I mean, it wasn't really merchandising, it was just honest propaganda. Pinter man is strong. It's just, yeah, that's the way, you know, you hit them with that message and eventually they'll drink more milk. The 70s wasn't much better. Let's have a look at them.
Beauty. What helps make you beautiful? What makes eyes sparkle? Gives you nice skin. Lovely teeth. Shiny hair. What helps give you a trim, healthy body full of energy? A proper balanced diet with plenty of pinters. Get your values right in a pinter every day.
Look at him. By the time he's finished that board, he'll be ravenous and exhausted. We're supposed to be going shopping this afternoon.
Here, give him some of this. Do you know there's almost as much protein in there as
a quarter pound of beefsteak.
You know what he's approaching, don't you?
No.
The energy gap. You've heard of the energy gap?
Of course.
Well, this fills it. Get a pinter into him at lunchtime, he'll be like a new man.
I could do with that.
Oh, yeah? But can you handle him when he's roused?
Cheeky.
Pour a pinter and you pour natural goodness. Pour a pinter and you pour nearly half the protein, 3/4 of the vitamin A, and all the calcium these young bodies need in a long day. No other food has a better assortment of the things a body needs.
Pinters are pouring, naturally flowing, nature's own goodness, day after day.
Make sure of their pinter. It's full of natural goodness.
To me, they all kind of fall under this great banner of, excuse me, your strategy's showing. I mean, oh God, talk about the obvious stuff. I mean, sure, they discovered the storyline with this sort of kind of carry-on quality that kind of went with it. And yes, they discovered music, but still, the execution feels pretty short on it. Let's have a look at the 80s.
Got a lovely body to keep a body fit.
body language, body knowing. Anybody, everybody needs bottle
equals protein and essential vitamins. Bottle equals calcium.
that everybody's body needs. Body wearing, body pleasing, body caring, body cheesing. Anybody at all, everybody needs bottle
equals protein and essential vitamins.
Bottle
equals calcium.
Gonna want it, gonna want it, gonna want it, gonna want it.
Body active, body passive, body slim and body massive.
The way we're living today, still gonna want bottle.
Whole milk, skimmed milk, semi-skimmed.
Bottle, gonna want bottle, gonna want bottle, gonna want.
The extraordinary thing was that in 30 years, just how little had changed. The propaganda, the persuasive flow of information was still there. And that great thing of where the copy always has to match the pictures. Beauty, shot of hair, all this sort of nice stuff. Really kind of very obvious stuff. And by the 80s, they were still doing the same thing. The only thing that changed in the 80s was the lighting and the music, both of which were much better. And of course, there were much better pouring shots as well. But ultimately, it was still the same damn formula. Nothing had really changed. They're all ultimately forgettable. I'll actually show you what they did in the 90s a little later on. But before that, I want to tell you why this model of advertising really doesn't work. If you think about it, it's a highly logical model. It makes sense rationally in your head. But consumers are not passive. They're not just sort of sitting there waiting for your ad and going to fundamentally change their whole life because of it. They don't take what we say at face value. As recipients, they choose to accept, to reject, to reinterpret, discredit, or worse still, just ignore all of our relevant selling messages. All of that advertising is just brilliantly forgettable. It doesn't actually make you stop, think, look, notice, do anything. The next point is that consumers have become much more advertising literate. They're much better and adept at understanding, at decoding all of our kind of advertising. They know how advertising works. They're not stupid, they don't like being sold to, and they really dislike this sort of obvious sell. Which comes on to the next reason why it doesn't work. It's because consumers have a natural disbelief. It's kind of a defense system. Can you imagine what a pain life would be if you actually really believed everything you saw on television? Oh my God, that wash is whiter than white, but this other guy said something, oh my God, what am I going to do? Trauma, it'd just be awful. It's kind of guilty until proved innocent, and I'm going to ignore you until you actually prove that to me. When someone actually, there has to be St. Power, I can't remember a brand that's come out with, this brand washes whiter than white. You've all seen the ad, and it's been done by a number of different brands, but did anyone actually believe it? Of course we don't. And it gets worse, because when you actually get all these claims, I'm telling you this about my product, often it reinforces it. You remember that lovely Foster's ad, right? Foster's Light. And there's kind of this great shot of pouring this Foster's, filled up the whole schooner, and then it kind of carried on pouring, and it went up and gave you a schooner and a half. Foster's Light goes over the top on taste. And I don't know about you, it just made me absolutely convinced that stuff must have tasted like piss. Oh my God, why would they be telling me this if it tasted any good? Ugh. And you think about Tooheys Blue, who went out there, they didn't actually go, hey, Tooheys Blue, it's a fantastic beer, it tastes really good. They didn't at all, they just said, blokes drink it, which was much more appealing. So the last point is this, and I'll tell you why this all doesn't work, is that there is an enormous difference between what we put into advertising and what consumers read into it. I'll tell you a story. It's an apocryphal story, but it'd be great if it was true. I heard it in London, and there was this guy in London. Parking is a real problem. Traffic is such a nightmare, and parking is at an absolute premium. There's a guy who lived in a block of flats. Outside his flats there were these garages, and all of the tenants were constantly getting into strife because his garage was right on the end, but he'd always get someone who was just parked in front of a bit of his garage, and he could never get his car out in the morning. He got really bored of coming into work and going, sorry I'm late, someone's parked in front, sure, in front of the garage. So what he did was quite simple. He went down to the hardware shop, bought a little sign, put up, no parking. He thought, I'll fix it. Goes down the following morning. There's another damn car there parked in front of his garage. He can't get out. So I thought, no, I'm obviously not getting through. What I need to do is reinforce the message. I'll make it stronger. So put no parking, garage in constant use. So get him. Following morning, he comes down and it's still the same damn thing. There's another car there. He's going, shit. In absolute desperation, there was nowhere else to turn. He actually turned to a copywriter friend of his and he said, can you help me out with this one? I don't know what to do. I'm getting late. I can't use my car. I'm going to have to park my car on the street and I don't want to do that. And he said, okay, leave it with me. 2 days later, no one ever parked in front of his garage again. The solution was really simple. This guy got this big spray can and he'd sprayed over the garage door, warning, skinheads live here. If you think about it, that's really smart. And it actually doesn't mean anything. Does it? What does it mean? Well, so what? The power of that communication isn't in what the message was. It's the meaning you put into it. And that meaning is I'm going to get my tyres slashed, my radio nicked, and all sorts of bad things are going to happen to my car if I park here. So that illustrates the difference between what we put into advertising and what consumers do. So that's how advertising used to work, or it's how we used advertising. And there are a lot of people who still do that. This is a different model of how advertising works. I call it the advertising window. In here, there is a direct link between the consumer and the brand. And advertising is literally a window through which to view the brand. It's not a tool to speak at consumers. It's a way to view the brand for themselves and discover the meanings for themselves. Critically, in this, advertisers' objectives become transparent. You don't let the advertising objective get in the way of a positive reassessment of the brand. You avoid the trap of all that milk stuff with, excuse me, your strategy is showing. It works because of the suspension of disbelief. As I said before, no one likes being sold to, or feeling manipulated or patronised somehow into buying a brand. It works because consumers become actively involved in the communication process. They're allowed to discover the brand values for themselves. You're not telling them what to think. And because they become a part of the communication process themselves, it reinforces a stronger relationship with the brand. It all sounds a bit esoteric when you just talk about those things. So the best way of illustrating it really is with a few examples, and I've tried to choose some Australian examples for that. The first is what I'd call experiential advertising. Let's have a look at this.
which is a way that's clear. Still looking for that blue jean, baby queen, prettiest girl I ever seen. See her shake on the movie screen, Jimmy Dean. And where do we go from here? Rock on, rock on.
Experiential advertising, I mean, that as a piece of advertising literally says nothing. There's no copy in it really at all. But it means everything. And it's the meaning you put into it. I mean, what kind of organisation would it be that would have one of the crew boys run out and actually give you a change just because you happen to be James Dean, walking down the street? It speaks volumes about the organisation. It says it's the original and produced advertising that is totally original. So the advertising itself is a reflection of the brand. It says it's a place for me, even though you're not even showing the place. It's an institution, it's an icon. And by that I mean a real power brand. It was, it is, it always will be. So experiential advertising is a great way of suspending disbelief. Another can be humour. Have a look at this.
You little beauties.
Some people say there's a real art to eating a hot buttered golden crumpet. But there isn't. And who cares anyway?
But what it does is it really just, you know, every year you actually forget about crumpets until Easter hits, and Easter comes around and you go, oh, I must have a crumpet. All it's doing is just bringing that experience to life. A little bit of wit, a little bit of humour, and dramatising that experience. So humour is a way of getting people to view your brand. Stories can also be a very involving way of actually diffusing cynicism and suspending people's disbelief. This is the example of where milk advertising actually went to in the 90s.
Got any lemonade? He wants. Milk! Ugh! It's what Ian Rush drinks. Ian Rush? Yeah, and he said if I didn't drink lots of milk, when I grow up, I'm going to be good enough to play for Accrington Stanley. Accrington Stanley? Who are they? Exactly. Nah, get off. Give me some. Get off.
It's not out there directly selling the you know, this milk is good for you thing. The confidence of a client who actually accepts when a little kid picks up milk, yeah, it's just fantastic. But what it does is say, okay, I'm prepared to listen to you now. It sucks you into a kind of 30-second play, which actually suddenly make all the values and the attributes of milk quite believable, just because you weren't patronising people in the way that you spoke to them. The last area, which is a great way of window advertising, is advertising value. Let's have a look at this spot. It's kind of extraordinary. That actually won an effectiveness award, and it had a major impact on sales. And what it does, I mean, the director, through his lighting, through the sort of orchestrated dance, through the rhythms, the beat, has turned really what is a warehouse of kind of dull, ordinary apples into some kind of theatrical experience that you want to watch again and you certainly remember. what we did was actually get away or sidestep the traditional health values and associations that apples have, and actually added something to that, which was energy and vitality. We ended up giving the humble apple its image a much needed polish. So those are examples of what I call window advertising. The last thing I'd do is just leave you with some of the issues I believe that are really important for creative when you're talking about working and summarise what we've talked about so far. One of the most important things is to really understand the difference between strategy and execution. You've got to, when you write a commercial, you've got to be on brief, you've got to distill all of that thinking, but you actually go out from it and go further. And that's where you make a leap forward from a brief. In the UK, I actually worked on a brand which is called Philips, and Philips had this great fuddy-duddy image, technologically brilliant, but kind of really my parents' brand. All the kids, the kind of stuff that they were into and wanted were things like Sony Walkmans. So we had a new range of youth products, and what we had to do was give them a kind of hipper, trendier image. Well, that was the brief from the client, and this is how we answered it.
This is the ludicrously expensive, state-of-the-art Philips CD960. It has a frequency range which is actually wider than the human ear. So I've asked Carl to make some slight adjustments to my head. That's better.
Very powerful. There's a whole series of cinema commercials which were shot on a very low budget. But it illustrates this fundamental principle, the difference between strategy and execution. It can be summed up by this. If you want me to believe that you're funny, don't tell me you're funny. Tell me a joke. And that, to actually, if you wanted people to believe that Philips was a youth brand, you had to be it, you had to show it, you had to understand where they were actually coming from. The second thing that I'll leave you with is that the quality of advertising is really important. Let me just show you a couple of commercials and tell you what I mean by that.
Conventional wisdom, a sandpit for an ostrich. At the University of Life, we run a different course. Entitled, Who Am I? Pay attention. I may be asking questions. The planet Mars is paradise. Voices are never raised in argument. Never. There's only one sex, so no emotional problems. No fast cars, no noisy discos. Everyone is equal and lives to 803. Me? I sold up and moved to Earth.
I didn't actually work on the brand, but I was in the agency when we actually developed that. And we went through a very long, protracted period of creative development and rejected, I don't know how many campaigns. It was probably about 20 or 30 because they researched too well, because people liked them too much. And Guinness actually had a value, a very important value, which was about advertising innovation and being on the cutting edge. So that's the campaign that we actually went with, because people didn't understand it. It worked its socks off. What it does is it demands that you stop and think about a message that's sort of really in a well-hidden puzzle delivered by this enigmatic Guinness man and he was the Guinness man, blonde hair and dark body and all of that. What the advertising does is actually credit you with some intelligence. And what it says, it attracts or is attractive to people that see themselves as individuals attracted by original brands and able to really appreciate works of pure genius. So sort of the advertising itself became a badge for the brand. I'd sort of compare that with the next lot and leave you with this thought, the importance of standing out. I think when you look at the whole of the beer category, there's only ever been one beer ad that's actually been made in the last 30 years, and this is it.
Working hard to make a living, bringing shelter from the rain. My father's son left to carry on blue denim in his veins. Oh, he's a working class man. Well, he's a steel town disciple. He's a legend of his time. He's running like a psycho across the wild Midwestern sky. Oh, he's a working class man. He believes in God and Elvis. He gets out when he can. He did his time in Vietnam. Still mad at Uncle Sam. He's a simple man with a heart of gold in a complicated land. Oh, he's a working class man. He ain't worried about tomorrow, because he just made up his mind. Life's too short for burning bridges. Take it one day at a time. Oh, he's a working class man. Oh, he's a working class man.
Just find the whole category extraordinary. That it's not advertising, that's merchandising. Every single brand is exactly the same as the other, and I really don't understand this. But when you look at an industry that is so rich in product innovation, and what they do in terms of bringing out new brands, new products, not new brands, new products, it's extraordinary that it is so devoid of advertising innovation. And all these brands, advertising does nothing to support them. There aren't any brands, they're products. And that's why they actually die. I mean, Resch's, the silver bullet, where's that gone? Disappear. Tui's Dry, it's got a big comeback now. And the answer is packaging, a kind of nice green label in a clear bottle. But, that just dropped away. It should never have been allowed to happen. So, the importance of standing out. The thought that I leave you with when you are sitting there developing creative is this: consumers are much more demanding of creative work than you are. And the reason why is they see 800 messages every single day, and they're sitting there choosing to watch or listen or actually take notice of all of those. And I guarantee you not even 1% will actually get through and leave any kind of lasting impression, unless you hit them over the head a lot. So let me just sum up in terms of what I wanted to talk to you about and give you some insights of two things, two relationships that will be useful for you developing creative. The only thing you've got to understand is how consumers relate to brands. And by that I said, do this, when you're running your ads, be true to brands. Understand what those values are, understand what they mean to consumers. Go out and reinforce the strengths. Find out the good bits in your brand and actually try and make those work harder for you. And whatever you do is stand for something. Otherwise you'll stand for nothing. And that's not good. The value of ads is really about adding value. That's why clients pay money to do it. So that's the relationship with brands. The second relationship you really got to understand and try and get inside your consumer's head. That's why you have target markets on briefs. Is understand the relationship with advertising. There is an enormous difference between strategy and execution. That doesn't mean you can go off brief and ignore the brief. You've just got to go further than that and come back with something that's surprising. The quality of advertising is really, really important. That can be a really important attribute of the brand in itself, which is why I showed you the Guinness advertising. And whatever you do, make sure you stand out, because unless you grab someone's attention, you're going to fail, however strategically correct your advertising actually is. Ultimately, consumers are more demanding of advertising than we are. So, if anything, I'll leave you with, from a strategic planner's point of view, is this. Great advertising demonstrates a real understanding of consumers, and poor advertising really doesn't. Thank you.
I just want to say, when you go home tonight, read over the notes from that speech just then, because all that stuff is what's going to give you the power to sell your ads, because the knowledge is everything. Most brand managers at agencies don't know half the stuff that Johnny's just told you, and if you wow them with that kind of knowledge, then you're going to go on and create the most famous advertising. So don't just think, oh, look, that's not my part, I'm a copywriter, or an art director. Think about what Johnny said and use those facts in meetings with clients, with your tutors, because, you know, you'll surprise them with your knowledge, and that's where it is. Thanks a lot.